what do I say? Akisema hiyo pesa haingetoka. She was that person in the project. And we have another one at the back there. If you can just stand kidogo. So, mtu wa mguu. Yeye ndiye anajua how we got linked to SNV and all the other partners that are here. But we are here. My name is Mercy. So nimesikia fununu hapo na kuanga mpole, lakini pia na kuanga mkali. Sasa sijui ni gani, but I want to both. I want to thank God so very much for this opportunity to be able to share with you what we have been able to achieve, to accomplish in the last few years that we have been implementing this RIMS project. But before I do that, I also, just like everyone else, want to appreciate the Csa Foundation for the achievements of today, or the reason why we have been able here today to celebrate and to sing about regenerative agriculture is because of Csa Foundation. Definitely through the SNV. Sigay is here representing the SNV. We are very grateful because you had faith in us that we can actually be able to do this work and that it was possible, and we have done that. So if you look at this very first page, it's a very busy page, but it's a beautiful page. We are looking at revitalizing agricultural productivity, accelerating healthy soils for sustainable livelihoods through regenerative agriculture in Western Kenya. If you look at the field, the pictures, these are pictures from fields. And even at the end there, you can see the sector lead, SNV, with one of our farmers who is here in our research site in Nakuru. Pauline, sikuangi mbaya na technology, but hii inaniweza. Here, sit there. It's taking time. Yeah, it's taking a while. Yeah, thank you. So I want us to start from the very beginning. And why are we all singing the song of regenerative agriculture now? What you know is that for the soil to be able to effectively fulfill its function, we'll not only be looking at the chemical properties of the soil, which has been the focus for very many years, but we are also looking at its physical as well as its biological properties. But over the years, what we've been doing is that we have only been focusing on the chemical properties, adding inorganic fertilizers to the soil. But we know that that is not what gives the soil its health. That is just taking care of just one aspect of that which is required within the soil. So when we talk about soil health, so we are talking about a holistic approach or system. We can actually call it an ecosystem, where we are not just looking at the chemicals, but we're also looking at how is the soil color, what is the structure, what are the microorganisms, the macroorganisms that can be able to survive within the soil. So what has actually over the years contributed to the kind of soils that we have been talking about since morning is often the excessive use of synthetic fertilizers. And in many cases, actually, we don't even use excessive synthetic fertilizers because first of all, they are very expensive, and secondly, we are not even able to really access them. Some farmers live far away from the agrovets, so they may not even be able to access them. But for those that access them, they actually use them in excess. In excess, why? Because you use what is required, then you realize it has not done very well, and you imagine that it is because you didn't put enough fertilizer. Next time you're adding, forgetting that actually it's not that chemicals that are there, but that are lacking, but it is something else that is preventing those chemicals you're adding from being utilized by the plant. So that, and then what we normally do is we rarely do soil analysis. We will always say maybe it's expensive, or maybe farmers may not be aware, or they don't know where to take their soils for analysis. So we are continuously adding fertilizers to the soil. We don't even know the status of the soils. But also, we do not have proper soil management practices. And all this contribute to what is referred to as land degradation. And most of our soils are actually degraded. I was looking at research that information that is there in the internet, and this is between 2001 and 2009. And there were researchers that were saying several years back, over 10 years ago, that over 80% of Kenya's land was under threat from degradation. So we don't know what percentage we have now. It could even be much more than the 80%. But of course, what we know is that that time they approximated that the loss that is associated with that loss, with that degradation, is about 1.3 billion US dollars annually. So that is what we lose continuously when our soils remain within that status. In the interest of time, this one I'm going to make it short. I left it this way particularly because I wanted this to come from plenary, but I'm also cognizant of the time. But one thing we know is that degraded soils are characterized by erosion because the soil structure is so spoiled that the soil particles cannot be able to hold together. And also because there is no good soil structure, we do not have enough organic material, so even water is not able to percolate at a good pace, so most of it actually flows away. Then the wind comes and also takes the rest of the light soils away. So we have low moisture content, we have nutrient losses, and definitely a change in pH, and it is always towards the acidity. So this is the circumstances that we have within our soils. Is that so? You are from which county? Nairobi County. You're from Nairobi County, but you also know some people within Nairobi are also farming. But I want to repeat because this is what we've been talking about since morning. The CDAs were here, they confirmed that. The farmers are here, you're the ones on the ground. You are also confirmed that that is our situation, acidic soils. So, don't worry, thank you. So what usually happens, our soils are acidic. What do? We do a more reactive approach, which is liming. So anyone will tell you just lime. Your soil is acidic, just lime. You have acidity in the stomach, take what? Panado. Antacids. Oh, not Panado, antacids. Take antacids. But it is Actor or whatever else that people are taking. But have you sorted the problem? It has not been sorted, and that is what we have been doing, sorting that the acidity without really correcting the problem, in which case we are not focusing on regenerating the soils. And if our soils are poor, and it has been agreed here that Kenya, the backbone of the Kenyan economy is agriculture. So if the soils are poor, they say 75 to 80% of the Kenyan farmers are smallholder farmers. So you can imagine it is them that are actually suffering. They're suffering the most. The soils become poor, they suffer the most, and that's why we easily have a lot of hunger, but also poverty cannot separate from there. For the simple reason that, of course, our smallholder farmers, quite a number of them are resource constrained, yet they rely very, very heavily on natural resources like the land for their upkeep. So we looked at what others have said about our soils. And this is what is coming out. This shows, we have Bungoma here. This is Siaya. We have Kakamega here, Kisumu. We have Eldoret. There is also Kericho somewhere. Kericho is here. So where you see the red, that is really, really bad. Already from, I don't know whether you can be able to see from there, but from the yellow, the deep yellow, this type of yellow, the pH is 5.6 to 6. So that we can say is not bad. At least 5.6 to 6, that is what is recommended for most of our crops because they will do well there. But from here, these other deeper yellow up to red, it is very bad. So what can we say about our soils generally? Majority of them are acidic. So this is where we are. And there was a mention of T-zone. I believe where we have the reds here is where we have tea. Even here, I wouldn't be surprised if Vihiga also find some tea. And of course, tea, because it's a monocrop for years. And because of the type of fertilizers that we are using, that's why we are seeing the acidity is actually less than 4.8. And because the tea farmers want more tea, what will they do? Eh? They add inorganic fertilizer. They will add and continue adding because that's what they want to accomplish without understanding that they're even making it worse. So it has been spoken here by Kibaya, and we are also aware, that it's not like this one has gone unnoticed. The government, we can say globally, regionally, and even nationally, the state and the condition of our soils is known. And they have not just kept quiet. Something is being done. And within Kenya, within our nation, even at the national but also at the county level, we have these strategies and plans that are guiding how do we go back to where we were. So I won't mention them, all of them, but maybe if there is any that we are missing here, Madam Jane, is there any strategy or plan that is being done at the national or the county level that highlighted among these few? So we have the climate. So what we are actually saying is that we are there. The song has been heard, and more people are joining to sing. So we are just in the right place. So all this highlight a shift from conventional towards sustainable and climate resilient, such as regenerative agriculture. So when we talk about regenerative agriculture, I know everyone here knows, but we are talking about adoption of farming principles that rehabilitate, revitalize, and restore the entire eco by enhancing natural resources and offering opportunities to address and resolve challenges of unsustainable agricultural practices. And that's where we are. And that's why we are here. And that's where we are saying that we'll push on. Because what we are looking at is improved soil health. And now there are people that are going ahead and saying they also want to use more renewable materials, resources. Like now Patrick was telling us here, now there is a focus on, it's not just about agriculture, agriculture is both crops and animals, but it's not just about focusing on crop production, but can we also bring in the issue of renewable energy? Because I believe that if we are able to incorporate both, then we can be able to borrow from, or they can be able to, we used to say symbiosis, to have a symbiotic relationship between the two of them. If we adopt biogas production, by default, we are having bioslurry. Sindio? So how did we do our research? Because you heard from in the morning, this project, RINS project, had 3 components, component 1, component 2, and we were answering into component 3. And this one was creation of evidence, generation of evidence. When you go and tell that the MCA, or you talk to the governor, or whoever you're talking to, and you're telling them that regenerative agriculture is the way to go, they will want to tell you how, they would want to know how. So the how is what we were trying to get into. And we are using organic manures. So we had bioslurry, farmyard manure, bokashi, and other commercial organic fertilizers. And this we compared against inorganic fertilizer. And we specifically dropped DAP, although DAP is the one that has been common in the commonly used as a base fertilizer during planting. We dropped that because of its role in acidifying the soils. So we used NPK instead. So we just did a normal research, randomized complete block design, replicated 3 times. So we did collect the soils before we planted, and then after planting and applying the fertilizers, we also collected the soils to see what was the effect, how were the treatments affecting the soils, but also how were they affecting the yields. Sindio? Because if you're telling the farmer, we need to regenerate our soils, and the materials we are using are not giving them a produce, will they adopt it? No, they won't adopt, because what the farmers are interested in is the crop. So you must ensure that you are also giving them a good crop. So we also tested that. So we looked at the materials that we were to test, and this is how they look like, the chemical composition. We just picked a few of the chemical components, and when we looked at the soil pH, first of all, we know our soils have issues because of the pH, so we wanted to look at also these materials, how their pH, because if the soil pH is acidic, it means that it will bring the same problem to the soils. So they were not really very bad because we were looking at soils that are almost near neutral or even alkaline, except for the inorganic fertilizer, that is the NPK. Even the NPK that we have is still slightly acidic. This falls within the class of slightly acidic. So the nitrogen levels were sufficient. The phosphorus levels, especially in inorganic fertilizer as well as in farmyard manure needed improvement, information that we've communicated. Then maybe the other thing I would want to talk about here is here, this area. The carbon-nitrogen ratio. Because we need to apply these organic materials that are very well composed. Kwa sababu gani? Mkulima yeyote, kwa nini tutumie manure ambayo imeiva? Yes, mwalimu. So asante sana, situmpigie tu makofi ndio wale wamekula ugali nyingi kama wanajisikia kausingizi kaishe. So it's for that particular reason, if it is not well decomposed, first of all, inaweza choma mumea wako as it continues to decompose, because as it is decomposing, itatoa heat. Si ndio? Secondly, the microorganisms pia zinahitaji chakula. Chakula yao ni nitrogen. So ukiweka yenye haijaiva vizuri, itaendelea kudecompose na itumie the nitrogen yenye iko, so mmea wako at the beginning utaona inafifia. Sasa unashangaa, mbona nimeweka hii mbolea na haifanyi kazi, mimea yangu bado imefifia? Kumbe haukuweka ambayo inafaa. So the message, one of the messages that needs to go down is we need to ensure that the fertilizer, the organic fertilizer is well decomposed before we can actually apply it. And of course, when we look at the carbon column, where we have the inorganic fertilizer, there is none. But we need to add carbon into the soil. So I won't discuss this so much. It is just that table that we have looked into. So what we can actually say, or maybe what I would want to point out here, is that we have already seen, of course, the organic fertilizers have higher pH compared to the inorganic fertilizers by up to around 38%. So they are actually very good for use in crop production. Now, these are the actual results of the soils now in the field. First of all, I mentioned that we did analysis before doing anything, before planting, before applying the treatments that we had. One thing that you can be able to realize or to notice is that, except in a few, actually, maybe like in here, in like this is potassium, in potassium. So if you look at the others, there was a general reduction. Generally, there was a reduction. Because when you apply the fertilizers, they will be consumed by the plant. How else do we lose the organic, the madini, fertilizer, within the soil, other than the plant uptake? Leaching, erosion, volatilization, crop residues. Burning, yeah, of course, if you burn, you're also losing them. Yeah, and what we're saying, of course, when you plant, the plant also takes quite a bit from the soil, and that's why we are seeing a reduction. And if this is what we are able to observe, it means that this is what exactly happens. Every season that you plant, you are losing some of the nutrients that you applied. And that this calls now for continuous application. Before, we were planting for several seasons without adding anything. But if I can remember my agriculture very well, we were talking about shifting cultivation. So you farm in a place for quite some time, then when fertility goes down, you move elsewhere. But now we don't even have that ability. So it is that soil that we have to make sure that it works for us. So what I will want to compare generally is just this, because this is commercial. This is commercial organic fertilizers, the ones that we can buy from the agrovets, and I would want to compare that with the inorganic fertilizers. So those that are in red was just showing of these chemicals that we analyzed, which of these two gave a higher value. So even if we were just to do a mathematics, just a normal county layer class 1, organic fertilizers were higher than inorganic fertilizers in how many chemical properties? Yeah. Of the soil. Yeah. Now, so that you don't get... The very first table that I've shown are the organic fertilizers that we used. How are their chemical composition? We have applied them now on the soil. So what is their effect on soil chemical properties? So we say 1, 2, 3, 4. So the organic fertilizers had a higher or a better impact on soil chemical properties, on 4 soil chemical properties compared to the inorganic fertilizer, where we had a higher value only with phosphorus. So something else I would also want to mention here before I leave this page is this. So this is farmyard manure and bokashi, which we easily are able to access from our farms. So you can look at the increase. Initially we had 21.9, but after application, farmyard manure increased phosphorus to 37, that is parts per million, and bokashi increased by 40.5 parts per million. And this still happened around this place where we have the CEC. And the CEC is the one that determines how fertile our soils are. If we have high CEC, it also means that our soils have a higher likelihood of being fertile, because we are looking at the cations within the soils. So they had very good impact on those two elements. So this an explanation of the table. What we can say in conclusion is that the commercial organic fertilizers enhanced pH, potassium, carbon, and CEC levels by 4%, 13%, 23%, and 11%, respectively, compared to inorganic fertilizers. And we are looking at resilience. Which fertilizers have a higher chance of enhancing resilience? Now, please do not get me wrong. What was mentioned here also in the morning is that we are not even talking that we should push out the inorganic fertilizers. No. There's even a possibility of integrating them, so that the inorganic fertilizers that have nutrients that are very easily soluble in readily available forms can do that. And the organic fertilizers can slowly release their nutrients into the soil so that all of them benefit the crop and eventually the soil, and then eventually the crop. So we also went ahead and looked at what is the effects of the fertilizers on the yields of the crops. we had different crops. We had beans, cowpeas, black nightshade, Swiss chard, which is spinach, and Irish potatoes. And when we planted beans as well as cowpeas, we found out that the commercial organic fertilizers supported germination percentages in beans and cowpeas by 93% and 119%. That is in comparison to the inorganic fertilizer. Are you following or you're still lost? You are lost. Eh? So what we're saying is that they had a higher ability to support the germination of the crop. And especially in a time when we're saying that we are not able to understand very well the weather patterns, we cannot be able to predict like we would before. So you are looking at having fertilizers that regardless of how the rainfall turns out, they'll still be able to support the germination. Because if the farmer plants and the germination is not very good, what will happen? Will they leave the farm? They will? They will do gapping. So if they are doing gapping, they are incurring extra costs on the seed, but also on labor. And now, since in the very first beginning, they did not have enough water. So they are also not assured of enough rainfall that can be able to support the newly planted crop to the end. So they may still end up losing it. Now, when we look at the yields, as we are going to look shortly, we found that statistically, there was no significant differences. There were some differences, yes, in the quantities of the yields, but they were not significant. So this is the table. So if you look at the commercial organic fertilizers, the germination percentage was 83, while that of the corresponding inorganic fertilizers was 43%. So the yields by the organic fertilizers were 1.94 tons per hectare. Wakulima, 1.94 tons per hectare. When we plant, sincerely, when we plant beans in our farms, how much do we harvest per acre? Because I think we do per acre. Wapanzi wa beans. Sacks ngapi? 5 to 6. 5 to 6 bags ama tons? Bags. That is how many kilos? 90. 90 kilos times 5, 450. 450 times 2.5 to make it hectares. How much? 1.1. 1.125. Yeah, even those ones, 1.125. So we are getting 1.125 when we can actually get more, and this is not even the overall. It's not the optimal. It's not the optimal yield for beans. In fact, they say optimal yields for beans is about 5.6 or 5.7 tons. But what we're saying is that the more we continue to use the fertilizers, then the more the yields we can be able to get.